you can't really mess up the truth. You can mess up a lie really bad, and it'll come back and get you and haunt you at some point.
I promise you, 80% of your performance issues inside your organization are because of misalignment in core values.
That was probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to do as an owner.
Hey, welcome back to the 3PX show. And we're talking people, profit, process, and everything in between. Thank you for finding us. And if you're here and you've never seen us before, then it's probably because Quentin did a good job with our SEO and YouTube tags and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, if you're coming back, that means maybe we said something in the last few episodes that you enjoyed. So
Yep.
welcome back. You're going to love this episode. Today, we're talking about a couple of components of EOS, specifically RPRS, which stands for Right People, Right Seat, and core values, which is a part of the vision component of the EOS system. Core values is really the combination of the guiding principles of how you operate your business. It's very similar to the culture of the business, which I define as the way people think, act, and believe inside your business. So it's not about what you do, it's how you do it. That
Yeah.
involves attitude and behaviors and everything else. So we're going to be talking about that. And just as a quick reminder, all of our businesses run on EOS. EOS stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, which can be a mouthful if you're not prepared to
It
say
can.
that all the way. But really, the way I want to get this kicked off is just to let everybody know there's a lot of operating systems out there. The key is when you find one that you're consistent and you're faithful to it and you execute at the high level. We happen to love EOS. And I think the best way to get this conversation going is just, Wayne, talk about how did you find EOS? Because the last episode you talked about, how you really stumbled across Profit First, reading the book, and that just really resonated with you. Kind of same path. What brought you, or how did you find EOS?
After I read Profit First, I was on vacation with Stephanie, got back, started implementing that, and started talking to people about it and discussing that book. And we all came to the conclusion it'd be good to read another book and maybe read a book as a team. And so EOS was the book that we read, and that was the first one that we just all took together, several of us, and we opened it up and we started reading it. We followed up every week. We would talk about what we learned on it, and everybody just seemed to get on board with it and fired up with it, and it just started resonating. And it just like the Profit First did. It was like, man, that's exactly what we needed to hear at the right time. And so when we started EOS, it just really spoke volumes to us, and we knew at that point that this is something that we definitely need to implement. And so we started reaching out and looking for an implementer to come in and just talk to us about the book. We didn't know if we could afford an implementer, but we started reaching out for different ones to talk to.
What made you decide that we want to bring in a professional implementer to help us with this, as opposed to going the route of self implementation? Because there's a lot of companies out there that they implement themselves, and
Yeah.
that's what we're doing currently. Is we're implementing and we're running on EOS ourselves. After that first year, we had a great implementer. I've mentioned his name on previous episodes, but Justin Most,
Wow.
one of the best implementers, I think, probably in the entire country. We got really lucky and blessed to have Justin that implemented for us. But how did you arrive at the decision? Because that's once you decide to run on EOS, the next critical decision is, okay, do we want to try to do this ourselves, or do we want to hire an implementer to guide us through this path? How did you make that decision?
That was a tough decision because for us, we probably would have chosen the implementing ourselves and jumping into it and doing it that way. Had a business associate up in Elkhart, Indiana, where Justin's from, that we just started talking to them a little bit about it, and they said, "Well, hey, we've been doing EOS for the past 12 months." And so, it's a 2-year process is what EOS usually says. Do it for 2 years, and then you can start doing it on your own, because that'll give you a good base and how to do it. And so, and then they said, we've got probably one of the best implementers ever. You ought to reach out and talk to him. And it was Justin. And so we reached out, we brought Justin down, and he talked to us, gave us the overview of it. And when you get around Justin, you just can't help but not like the dude. And when he talked to us after the first a little bit, we gathered together and talked about it. I was like, dude, that's the guy we want. That's who we need right there because he will make a difference. He'll help implement it the way it needs to be implemented. You can read the book and you can do it yourself. And I've also got friends that have done it that way that I know here in town that have implemented it themselves. And as we talk about it, we talk about core values. One of the biggest ones we talk about, yeah, we built core values, and it got all that laid out. It's like, well, how everybody's sticking to them and everything. Says, well, I don't know if we did it the right way, but it's really, we thought it was, but we just came up with some stuff, and they just didn't do it the right way. And if you self implement things, sometimes you just don't do it the way it's supposed to be done. And you
Mm.
get a really, really good implementer like Justin, and he lays it out so great. I mean, the whole thing, RPRS, core values, everything. It helped the whole process. And then when you came, it was we were probably a year in it, and then you just jumped on it and I mean owned it from day one. And after the first year with you being here, we could do it ourselves. I mean, you do a great job. You do to me just as good of a job as Justin does.
Well,
How about that?
that's high praise. For
Yes.
anybody who knows Justin Moss, that's high praise. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, so let's dig into,
Sorry, Justin, by the way, yeah, Steve does a good job too, so.
love you, Justin. Um, let's dig into our topics because we're gonna start with core values
Yeah,
because that leads to RPRS, which stands for right person, right seat. But we're gonna start with core values and what you and the team had to do really in that one of those first sessions, that kind of vision session, is you had to define what are the core values for our company. Now, ultimately, you came up with, and we still have today, our 5 core values of good character, genuinely cares, above and beyond, passionate about winning, and fun. Those are our core values.
yeah,
Now, what's important about defining core values for your organization, first and foremost, is the core values cannot be aspirational.
right.
These core values need to already exist and be embedded in your best people. Now, the trick here is do not assume your best people are top performers, top salesperson, kind of thing. Your best people are those are the people that are consistent every day that you love to be around, you love to work with. When you need help with something, these are the people that you go to, and then you start extracting and defining what is it about those people that makes them special, that makes them great.
Yeah,
Um, so core values is your cultural DNA.
yeah,
It is also how an organization makes hiring and firing decisions. Well, and we may talk a little bit about that. It provides clarity and consistency to the business because we're all aligned on exactly how we think, act, and believe. And then the last thing is it actually provides you with a strategic filter. When you're making decisions about your business, you run these decisions through your core values. Hey, this thing that we want to do, does
right.
this align with our core values and who we are? So that's a big step, and not to be taken lightly. Deciding what those core values are is pointing true north
Right.
for who you're going to be. So, talk a little bit about that process of sitting in a room with your team, and you all have to come up with these core values. Who are we, and what is that true north for our company?
Yeah, so, the biggest thing that Justin did was just talk similar to that, and that we were just gonna go through the process and just start writing words that meant something to us personally kinda thing, and so we put 100 words on a whiteboard, and then we went through the keep, kill, combine, where you'd, "Hey, let's combine these words. Let's kill this one. This doesn't mean anything to anybody." We all agreed that it didn't like it, and then we would, and then we'd keep the ones that we wanted it to narrow that list down, but
Mm.
like you said earlier, it's your DNA, and so you look for people that's got the same DNA, basically the same blood type, right? Because you want those people that you don't all have to be alike, but in some areas you want everybody to believe the same thing. And so as you start going through the core values, because when we were before we went through the core values, you could ask what our culture was like, because core values and culture go really hand in hand, go really well together, right? And so you'd ask, if we had 20 people working for us, and you could ask 20 people what our core values, our culture was like, and you get 20 different answers. Now they may all be close to the same, and you could come up with it, but that's kind of how we did it. started talking and laying out just different things that were important to us, So, we loved giving back, and people really liked that about our company. As we talked about it and we hired people, we talked about giving back and how we did philanthropy and things. And so we already started attracting people like-minded like that. We wanted people with good character because we wanted to always show, hey, let's take care of our customers. Let's make sure that we always do the right thing. Because and if you do the right thing, and if you tell the truth, you can't really mess up the truth. You can mess up a lie really bad, and it'll come back and get you and haunt you at some point. But if you're doing the right thing, character that just so as we started going through and started building all those aspects, it was fun to see because it took us about 2 to 3 hours to build the core values because we started out with a bunch of words and we ended up with five core values, and then we got some like sub phrases under them, or sub words under each one of them that really brought it all together. And when we got done, it was so neat just to sit back. I remember sitting there looking at it and just sitting back in my chair, and I was like, you know what, that's who we are. That's our DNA. I know it. I can feel it, and everybody that was in the room felt the exact same way. That is who we are, and we're going to win with that formula.
Mhm. I've said this before about reputation, where reputation takes a lifetime to build and one wrong decision to ruin.
Yeah.
Culture and core values, for the purpose of this conversation, is the same thing. It's taken years and years to build, but in just a very short period of time, with some bad decisions or the wrong type of energy coming from leadership, you can erode and almost destroy those core values, and then it takes years and years and years again to build that back. I want to get into a conversation now of when you start building that culture, and then we can talk a little bit about what are the things specifically, and I can speak to some very specific policy things that we do to enforce core values, but talk about building that culture, building those core values, because ultimately, as much as you'll shy away from this because you don't like the spotlight, but that it's got to start from the top.
Yeah.
If the founder, the CEO, the leader of the organization is not displaying those core values, you're sunk.
Well, the last thing that you want to do is have your team build the core values without you in the room or without you kind of thing, because really I have to be the one for the most part to own the core values. And for the longest, for the first 10 years, we didn't have core values, or 9 years, somewhere in that area. We knew we had a good culture, but we didn't really know what that was. And so when we hired people, sometimes those people didn't work out, and we always wondered why they didn't work out. And that was a big concern. Why did that not work out? It's got to, like you said, it's got to start from the top and go and trickle all the way down. And if I didn't believe in our core values, I would just walk right past them, and so would everybody else. And then it
Mhm.
just becomes writing on a wall. And that's what I've heard from other CEOs that have implemented it and they did it on their own, that they had input, but they let their team give a lot of input, or more input, or maybe all the input, and it just nobody bought into it. And I bought into it because I've always been so careful of culture. I've been very guarded with it because early on, when I started feeling that we had a really good chemistry and a good culture in the company, I was very protective of that, and I still am, because
Mhm.
it's one of those that, hey, we have to keep doing what we're doing and be the type of people that we are, and it'll come back to bless us in the end. And so, and it has. I mean, you see how our company's grown and all the people that we have now. Getting our culture right is it's almost like that hub where you get the culture right, you get the core values right, you get them correct. Everything else around it starts working properly. As we talk about a little bit, RPRS and other things like that. If you don't have the right culture, if you don't have the right core values, h- how do you know to put the right people in the right seats, right? So
100%. And there's no doubt in my mind, without the right core values and the RPRS that we'll talk a little about later, without those two things, there is no possible way we would have found the success
yeah.
that we have. And breaking news, I probably should have started with this. Breaking news that the forward companies was just recognized as one of the top 25 fastest growing companies by the Nashville Business Journal.
Woohoo, look at that.
So
For 2025, that's
yeah,
pretty awesome. That's amazing.
yeah. So,
So
but the reason why I said that is because if we didn't have well-defined core values that are not aspirational, but are truly embodied by you and our best people, that this is just how you live. This is just how you operate. This isn't something that we're trying to aspire to.
Yeah.
And then defining our right person, right seat through the lens of those core values, there's no way we'd be where we are today. And
We've had people, really, and I don't mean to cut you
no,
off.
no,
No.
go ahead.
So we had people that's worked here a bunch over the years, that have stuck with us, especially the core. If I almost feel like once well, I think we said this before, we get somebody that's been here for a year, they're probably going to be here a lifetime. I mean, because they believe in what we do, and they've bought into who we are. I've had so many employees here that have talked to me about our core values and what it means to them, and how they appreciate them, and how they appreciate a company that has the core values like what we have, and they resonate with them really well. And so it not only helps you define who you are, but it also helps define the type of person that wants to work here too. Because there's some people that say, "Hey, you know what? I don't believe in those core values." Hey, yeah, that's okay. You don't. Not every. It's not made for everybody, right? Not every core values are made for people, but the ones that believe in what we do, it really attracts the right people. And what's really fun is when you start seeing the people doing the hiring, like Patricia and her team, and you sit in on an interview, or you sit back and you listen to them, and they start talking about core values when they start going over different things of the company. I don't even have to say the first word anymore. I can just sit back and smile, because it's like, dude, they're giving just as much energy as I would
Mhm.
talking about core values, and that's when you know there's something special going on.
In our first interviews that Patricia was doing primarily, and now we've grown, we've had to expand her team. Obviously, we spend probably more time talking about core values and
Yeah.
making sure a candidate aligns with those core values more than we do actually talking about the job. And I'm going to give Quentin some more real content right here. If a company is doing what they're supposed to do to set up a candidate for success, meaning the onboarding is good, you provide good training, you're doing what you're supposed to do so that someone knows how to perform their job. I promise you 80% of your performance issues inside your organization are because of misalignment in core values,
Yeah.
not because the person doesn't know how to do the job, not because they're they're just not smart enough to figure it out. It's because they're not aligned with the core values or the culture of your organization, and that's creating performance issues.
And the next thing too to go along with that is, and why it's so critical to get core values right and to make sure everybody's aligned with it. Because what happens when someone comes in here and they work for you and they believe in the core values, and you don't live up to those core
Oh,
values, you don't do those core
talk
values,
about that.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, so that just totally destroys what you're trying to build, because now you got to have someone that says, they just get upset because, well, you're not who you say you are. You said that this is a type of company you are. Here's your core values. Here's what you do. And yeah, do we make mistakes at times? Everybody makes mistakes at times and stuff, but we own up to those things, and we own them, and we work through them. But that can destroy you quicker than anything. And so it's super important. If you put them up on the wall and you talk about them and you have them, you got to make sure that you live them, and they're personal to you. And so the core values that we have, I feel like, are very personal to me. I mean, I love them. I feel like they are the perfect core values for who we are as a company, and who I am. Those are core values that I really, as Stephanie and I, as we were building our trust and all those kind of things over the past year. One of the attorneys asked, "Hey, y'all need to have core values for your family," and so we're going through all these different core values, and talking about it, and building the same thing. And really, it almost boiled back to the ones we have for work. That's our core value. That's who we are. So it's not only we living it at work, but we also are living it at home.
Yeah. And for anyone who's interested, if you just want an example of core values, you can visit our website, forward.com. It's FOREWORD, forward.com. Click on about us. You'll see our core values. You'll
Yeah.
also see our core focus. Our core focus is glorify God, grow people, change lives. And so, hopefully that blesses you if you get a chance to see that example as
Yeah.
well. But we got to talk about RPRS, because RPRS, and this goes to the hiring and firing,
Yeah.
is We hire people, we fire people based on that the core values, right? So RPRS stands for right person, right seat. Core values is what defines are they the right person or not.
Exactly.
And then get it, want it capacity.
Mhm.
We call that's called GWC. Get it, which is do they understand the job? Do they understand the impact of the job? Do they know what they're doing and what it means? That's get it. Want it is are they excited about this job?
Yeah.
Are they passionate about doing it? Do they like doing this kind of work? Because a lot of people are doing jobs that they don't like, they don't enjoy, they don't want. And that impacts their performance, obviously. And then capacity is it can be a multitude of things, but have they been trained properly?
Yeah.
Do they know what they're supposed to do in the job? Do they have the time to accomplish the job? Do they have the physical or mental capacity, to do the job? That's capacity. So when you're looking at right person, right seat, RPRS, it's the combination of all those things. It's the core values and it's the get it, want it capacity. So after you're defining core values for your organization, then you go through this exercise, this RPRS exercise, and it starts at the top. And you're looking at all your people. How hard was it for you to really look honestly and put the relationships aside sometimes, right? Because you worked for 7 years, almost 10 years when you started going, or
Yeah.
more with some of these folks, right? But what I find is most business owners, they tend to lean too much on the relationship and the emotional side. I've been working with this individual for so long, and it almost skews your vision of that RPRS structure, get it, want it, capacity, and core values. Talk about how difficult was it for you? Because we've had this conversation already before, but really, how hard was it for you as an owner to look honestly across your team, across your organization, and do that RPRS exercise?
That was probably one of the most difficult things that I've had to do as an owner. 'Cause and really when we first did it, um, messed it up totally. Because, when we met with Justin and had our first session and we started going through it, I had my leadership team in there. And so then and Justin even said, "Hey, if you don't feel like you got the right person for this, then don't put anybody in there at this point. You just got to play that role." So, visionary, okay, I had that one, and I feel like I fit that role well. Integrator, and then you had your people that are going to run the different departments, and and really just. But what happens with an owner is they start looking around and looking at the people, and you can, see the glitter in the eyes of the others, and almost a little bit of jockeying, a little bit too from the others. That, well, I think I should be the one in this position, or I think I should be this one over here, and hey, I think you need to do that one over there, and 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 opening themselves up, and the more you talk about it, and then. This person says, "Yeah, I don't worry about that one. Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one over here, or and I can do this one." And then it leaves it open maybe for the person that probably shouldn't have gotten it, but he has more of the strongest willpower and pushes and gets that. And so those kind of things happen at the very beginning and laying it out. And so really made it and so but at that point we thought we had it right and thought we were okay because we were only looking internally instead of really looking at the overall vision. And after we went about 6 months into the whole process, you can start seeing the effects and you can start just feeling it because every I think it's every once a month, wasn't it? Or is it every other month that he came in? With Justin, I think
Yeah,
it's every
once a quarter.
once a quarter. Yeah, once a quarter he'd come in, and so we had probably 2 or 3 sessions by this time, and I could just feel it, Whereas one of those that, and I made a mistake in putting the wrong person in that seat. And so or you might have someone that comes about a quarter later, because we had this happen too, and say, "Hey, I don't think that seat is for me. I don't think I really need to be that. I'd rather be here, out in it, and I'd rather just step off the leadership team if that's what it takes to do it." I appreciate that big time when somebody comes to me and tells me that because the last thing you want to do is put someone in a position like that doesn't want it, want it capacity right. And so when you realize they don't want it, well then you got to make a change. Well, when they don't want it, who's going to take it? And then it's rejockeying again for a little bit and seeing who's going to take that. And so went through that process and But it also, as you started looking at it, again, it's the get it, want it capacity. And then I had this one young gentleman, and we've talked about this too, that he went into my director of operations because that's all we had as director levels at that point. And he took it and he ran it for about 6 months. Great, great kid. And I call him a kid because I'm old enough to be his dad.
Well, it's
But
because you're old.
yeah, exactly. That's everybody's a kid to me right now. So, so, but he was a good guy, and he took the director of operations, and he got it. He's super smart, super intelligent, and you could tell he wanted it really, really bad. The capacity was the issue that we had at that point, and which is a big issue, right? That's probably the most critical of the three is the capacity. And then as Justin and I talked about it and discussed it, really looked and said, okay, well, how long will it take? Can he learn this job in a year and do it, and or is it going to be like a 5 year plan? And I had to answer that question very truthfully if I wanted our company to take the next step and to grow. And so when he asked the question, I was like, well, I'm not the one that can train him. I don't think I can be the one that can lead him in that next step and get him to that point. So if he's here another year doing this position, he's just going to be a better version of what he's doing in a year, maybe, or because he's going to become set in the ways that he knows, or in 5 years, he'll be a better version of that, right? But does that still mean that he still has the capacity if he doesn't get the right leadership or the training? He was fantastic in some of these other roles. And so I had to make the decision to have the conversation with him to move him out of that role and into another role that was, not as prestigious of a role, but move him in something that he would have better success at. And that was an extremely tough conversation. That was a conversation that could have gone any way, where he could have said, you know what, if I can't have this role, I'm just going to leave. And he stayed because he liked our core values, liked where we were going. He's super disappointed, and I got it. But we worked with him, made sure that he was good, and moved him over to a new role to where we could open up this role to bring in a director of operations. And the end of that story right there was a few months later is when I met you, and we started talking and went through about a 4 month courtship, and really to be honest with you and be honest to our audiences, I didn't think there was a chance at all that, from where you came from, that you'd come to a much, much smaller company, because I mean, you came from $1 billion organization, and we were doing nothing compared to that, not even 1% of that, maybe one, well, and yeah, not even 1% of that. And so it was, that all worked out well. And then my other gentleman over here that I moved out of the way, yeah, he's had tremendous success. He's grown back into the business where he's in a super nice leadership role, and probably a role that's more fitted for him. And he's having probably the best time that he's had at the company ever at this point. And his path is different, but it's a path that fits him so well. So you move him out of a bad role. He's not the right person, right seat for this role, but you move him in a role where he was, and then he's advanced and grown to where he's at now. He's the right person in the right seat for his position that he's in now. And I feel like the best COO president of a company is in the right seat for us too, which is you. You've been a game changer on that, and then it's just helped resonate and help bring other leaders that we needed to the team.
Yeah. And I want to kind of wrap this up by saying that some of the key things that you brought out were, we have this phrase open, honest, transparent, right?
Yeah,
You had to have open, honest, transparent conversations, and that's hard to do.
very hard.
You also mentioned that the conversation, like, he that you had with, your previous director of ops, it it could have went south and he said, "Hey, I don't want to, be here anymore." And that is a risk that you are willing to take in order to get to the right decision.
Right,
And that's the key takeaway here is when it comes to your core values, you have to be open, honest, and transparent about who you are and who your best people are to define the core values for your organization. When it comes to get it, want it capacity and core values of people in your organization, that's going through that exercise of right people, right seat. It requires open, honest, transparent conversations. If you love people, you will be honest with them about how you feel about them. The worst thing you can do as a leader or as a manager is to walk around the office all day long feeling some kind of way about one of your team members and you never love them enough to sit down with them and tell
Right.
them exactly how you're feeling.
And a lot of business owners have do that. I've done it, and I probably did it a decent amount even at that point. But it as soon as I did it and had that conversation and made the moves and really and and then made the right hires and put the right people in the right seats, you're talking about a burden lifted off, and it's one of those you look back and you think, "Man, I should have done that a couple of months ago. I'd have felt a lot better. I'd have slept a lot better." It's a tough decision for an owner, and so I encourage you as a business owner or someone that's in that position, hiring somebody, or they have a wrong person and the wrong person, right seat. However, that have those conversations, be open, honest, and transparent. It'll make you feel so much better to do it. Just do it in the right way and do it with love and patience and respect and courtesy. And it's also going to make them feel better too. It'll hurt. It may sting for a minute, but if you have the right conversation in the right way, it can be a win-win situation. And that's what happened in this situation. It was a win-win.
Yeah. Well, I like to give player tips. I forget what the episode was. It was an episode or two ago, but
Okay.
the you tell me player tip, right?
Uh huh.
Well, I got a player tip because these are difficult conversations. So it's the when you I feel. So just remember that when you I feel.
Yeah.
And basically that's this is just a way to formulate a difficult conversation with a team member because whenever you're having a tough conversation with someone, you can't just tell them how you're feeling. You got to give examples.
Yeah.
And so you can match that feeling back to what they're doing. So I'm going to give you an example. When you show up late to work, I feel like you don't respect me or your team members, right?
Yep.
When you're not completing your work on time, I feel like you don't understand the assignment or something. When you, I feel. So if you plan your conversations around having those examples, when you do this, and then you're sharing with them how it makes you feel, I feel, it's very difficult for someone to argue how you're telling them that you feel. I'm feeling upset. How could you argue with me about that?
Right.
But if I'm just sitting down across from you and I'm writing you up because you showed up late or I'm, writing you up for because your performance is bad, then it becomes an argument.
Then it becomes a core value issue as well because they're thinking, well, you're not living up to the core values and you're sitting here writing me up.
100%. So if you took anything away from the you tell me player
Yeah.
tip, I feel like you will really enjoy. It's Matthew calling me.
It's
He's
one of those you almost have to take.
No, I almost have to take. Yeah,
Yeah.
Matthew's deployed in the Army. Shout out to Fort Campbell, our airborne
Headed to
brothers
Germany
and
soon,
sisters
isn't he?
up there. He just got back from Germany,
Oh, okay.
but yeah, he's up at West Point training some of the. Oh, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about this stuff.
Wow.
Well, they're up at West Point training some of the cadets up there at West Point.
Okay.
I'll call them back because I love our 3PX
Yeah.
peeps. Please use that player tip.
Yeah.
When you, I feel, connect the specific behavior or whatever the team member is doing to a specific feeling. And then that's where you work through coaching that team member and having a difficult conversation. So, all right, last thing. I know I always say that. Last thing, I'm going to wrap this up.
But dude, that was a
Last
good one
thing.
right there. When you, I feel that's you could have left that as last thing, but go ahead, give me a last
Yeah,
thing.
I like your t-shirt.
Ah, well, thank you.
WWW. Like I think this might stick,
This
right?
might stick.
WWW. What's Wayne wearing?
What's Wayne wearing?
Talk about your leadership t-shirt you got here.
So it's leadership is an action, not a position.
Yeah.
You ever get around people, and you get people that want a different job and they want to go up into management, but when they get into management, they kind of they look at it. Oh, I've got this position now, so I'm entitled to do whatever I want to,
Mhm.
or I'm entitled. I can come in late, or I can, or I can push this off or push it on to somebody else. When leadership truly is sometimes you do more, and a lot of times you do more than everybody else because why? You're the leader. You're not just thinking about yourself anymore. You're thinking about the whole entire company. You're thinking about how it's going over here, how this is doing. If this person didn't show up, who's going to take their spot? Sometimes it's got to be you to take that spot. If especially when you're a small business, if the place is gonna get cleaned up and swept and everybody's gone, well, who are you gonna get to do it? Sometimes it's you who's got to do it. So, there's been plenty of times when I first started out, I was cleaning the toilets. I didn't wanna do it, but leadership is an action, not a position. So that means, as you're a leader and you're doing, you got to be actionable about the things that you do. And so, if you just sit back and don't do anything, then you're just using it as a position, and you can use it over people, and that's just not the right way. That destroys core values as well.
Mhm. Quentin is going to have to delete from this podcast all the times I've said wrapping this up or to finish this or or something like this now. But he's a magician.
He
He'll
can do it.
yeah, he'll figure that out
Houdini.
because we're having such a good conversation. It's like, man, I just can't shut up. And I know we got to, more we got to talk about, but the related to this,
Yeah.
I find that the majority of the time, and I don't want to say 99%, but it's up there. The vast majority of the time that someone wants to get promoted into a manager role,
Yeah.
it's because you make more money
Yep.
or because they're enamored by that prestigious, you use that word, that prestigious
Title.
position,
Yeah.
right? And what happens is they fail to be successful because they're not passionate about leadership.
Exactly.
We have had people just recently step back from leadership manager roles because they I don't know how else to say it other than saying they got tired of dealing with people issues. They
Yeah.
got tired of having to get involved in all this stuff. And yeah, they enjoyed making a little bit more money for a while, but if you're not in management because you love leading and you love people and you love communicating with people and solving problems and removing obstacles and all that kind of stuff, that paycheck's going to get old after a while.
Yeah.
You're
Don't
going
do
to
it.
spend it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. So, if anyone who's listening to this, if you are looking to make more money, or you like that title, director, vice president, manager, or whatever that might be, I would encourage you to fall in love with leadership. Start leading now, and there's lots of different ways you can do that through a civic organization, through your church, your family. You can be leading in your organization before you even have that position or authority. You can be a leader. Start demonstrating those characteristics and get involved in what it truly means to be a leader and find out, is this really what you want to do for the
And
rest of your life?
I tell you too, if you haven't been a leader before and you're wanting to be a leader, the best thing that you can do as well is start reading
Mm,
and reading leadership books. One of the very first books, when you said it, one of the very first books that I read years and years ago, probably, gosh, 20, 30 years ago, was The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John
John
Maxwell.
Maxwell.
And I read the book, and then I had at that point, there wasn't, we had, the cassette tape, and so I would put that in, and I had about a 50-minute drive to work, where I was working at the time, and I'd listen to it there and listen to it back. I got to where I almost wore that tape out because I listened to it so much, but it was so good because each one of those laws can stand alone, but when you put them together, it really defines and helps you learn about leadership. If you're serious about learning to be a leader and you want to be a leader and you want a manager position or you want some position of leadership, you got to invest in yourself and you got to invest even as an owner, you got to invest in your people to learn how to lead as well. So it goes both ways, but it's super, super important to be able to do that because you want to be able to develop the people under you as well.
100%. I really appreciate that you mentioned, reading. Not everybody likes to read, so get the audio tape or the
Yeah.
audio book, or a podcast,
Yes.
you know,
3PX,
or
about, something like that.
hire a coach.
Yeah,
Everybody needs a great mentor
they do.
or a coach. But this is what I want to encourage everyone. Do not allow your vision of what good leadership looks like to only be formed by the manager you work for or the people who you have worked for.
Yeah.
You have to broaden your vision, your perspective of what leadership means. And sometimes the only way you may get a good perspective or a different perspective is if you read a book, if you have a mentor, or you hire an executive coach or leadership
Yeah.
coach or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you just think management or leadership is what the boss is doing that I work for or the previous boss I worked for, chances are you're probably not going to be as successful as you can be.
Experience can help with that as well, right? Yeah, I remember before I started CDF, I looked back at every spot that I worked, and I thought about the people that I worked for, and I had this one person that was this way. Is like I learned from that person how not to lead people, basically, because they were just Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And man, you talking about keeping your stomach, and this person taught me how to manage inventory, and how to do that kind of stuff. And this one over here was, hey, not don't chase rabbits. Do what you do and do it really well. And this person over here, make sure you communicate well, because I was in a sense dropped off and hey, take it and do it. And nobody knew that I was a leader and a business one time. And you talking about being tough. That was
Mm,
super, super tough. But, I was able to work through it because I'd had enough experience. Sometimes experience is a good thing to do too, and then some people talk about, they're just such a terrible boss. Okay. Well, what would you do different?
mm,
And how would you do? If you were in that position, how would you do it? Because if they're such a terrible boss, maybe they're not a good communicator. Maybe they're a good boss. They just don't know how to communicate the right way. But and that's a big issue as in itself. But you got to take those little things that you learn over time, and put them together. And if you don't look back, sometimes I'm such an optimist that I always like to look forward and think about the big picture and all that. But sometimes it's good to look back and say, okay, what did I learn from these different people that I didn't like this, but I really like this about that person. You'll learn a lot about and that builds who you are. And I think that's really what helped put me in the leadership position and starting the business, and our core values and our culture is by learning from different people's of, in a sense, what not to do, but also learn what to do as well. So that helped me a lot.
yeah. For those that made it this far, I got to let them know. Next episode, we are going to talk about how to solve the most critical and key issues inside your business. We're going to give you a framework of how to solve the toughest issues inside your business. And we are also going to talk about how to set the right goals inside your business to make sure that everyone is focused. So you don't want to miss the next episode. Thank you for listening, and
Yep.
please engage with us on our website, on our social media accounts, personal or the 3PX account. We love to see comments, interactions, engagements, and for most of our listeners, you've all got our cell phone number. So
Exactly right.
yeah, so keep texting us, what you like or what you'd like to hear about a next episode. Thank you for watching or listening to the 3PX show. We can't wait to see you again soon. See ya.
Thank you. See ya.
I love it.
Dude.
Quentin's over here like, land the plane, dude. Land the plane, dude.